In this episode of Feverdream Café, the destiny of Afrikaners in South Africa. Orania, a self-sustaining village by Afrikaners for Afrikaners. What does it mean to be a minority in your own country? And what can we learn from the struggle of Afrikaners? Welkom terug bij de nieuwste aflevering van Koortsdroom Café, waar we de waanzin van de dag gaan bespreken. Maar voordat we dat doen, ik heb verdrietig nieuws te melden aan alle nationalisten in Nederland die hier naar luisteren. Wij gaan Engels praten, maar dat heeft een hele goede reden. We hebben een hele bijzondere gast aan tafel die Afrikaans spreekt. En het lijkt heel erg op Nederlands. En we hadden net de discussie. Gaan we dit in het Afrikaans doen en Nederlands of in het Engels? En we zijn er uiteindelijk toch op gekomen om het in het Engels te doen. Want Massimo had een hele mooie opmerking.
We zijn allebei helaas veroverd door de Engelsen.
Helaas.
Oeh, ik weet niet zo mooi daarvan niet. Gewond, maar onoverwonnen.
Precies, gewond maar onverwonnen. Dus we gaan nu over op het Engels, zodat iedereen hiernaar kan luisteren. En ook alle internationale gasten die meeluisteren. Dus welcome to Feverdream Café. I'm here with...
Massimo Etalle.
With...
Nick Ridlinghuis.
And...
Joost Strydom.
Joost Strydom is the leader, the CEO of Orania. And he's going to tell us all about it. Nick is also from South Africa. This episode will all be about South Africa. And before you get a chance to introduce yourself, I have to pour some wine first. And for this occasion, we brought a pinotage from Stellenbosch, South African grape race, which was mixed between the Pinot Noir and the Hermitage. So this would be suitable for this occasion. And I will pour your glasses right now, and you can introduce yourself, Joost.
Dankie aan al die Nederlandse en Afrikaanse kijkers, and then for our international audience in English. We do this for you in English, and so to make sure that everyone can understand. I'm from Orania. Those of you who have not heard of Orania, Orania is a community in South Africa, specifically with the goal of preserving Afrikaans and build out Afrikaner freedom. It is what we would describe as a growth point. So Orania is both an idea and a place, as many places are. And as your organization is as well. It's both an idea, a dream, and it's also a physical place with physical people. Me, myself, I'm the CEO of the Orania movement. It's our idea movement, our ideological movement, works with policy, international liaison. You can even call it Orania's Department of Foreign Affairs. And there we work to progress this idea, this growth point to create a national home for the Afrikaners.
I understand, so it's an idea, but many people, many countries, cities say, yeah, we're built on an idea, but what is the idea specifically?
The idea is that there are requirements for freedom. Those requirements need sacrifice, and in order to have something truly lasting, you need to build it. So I think maybe I can say something about the problem in South Africa before I can explain the solution of Orania, because Orania is a solution. I think it's revolutionary in its design, in terms of some of the solutions that we are proposing to the problem that the Afrikaner have. And just to start, I think our main problem is a demographic problem. So Orania is a demographic solution, and that's where the Orania idea comes from. And the Orania idea is then built on several pillars that is answering to that idea, or to that problem.
Were you born in Orania?
I was not born in Orania. I was actually forced to go there. Because I was too small to have a say in the matter. We moved from a region in South Africa known as KwaZulu-Natal, and some of our English-speaking listeners might know it because of the film Zulu, which played off in KwaZulu-Natal when the English and the Zulus had a major battle there. So Natal is a beautiful province in South Africa. We left it in 1995 because of the amount of violence that we were seeing there. Major political battles between the current government in the ANC and the IFP, so two opposing factions. But also because we were looking for a solution. My parents were looking for a ethical way forward while still preserving their culture, but still building something sustainable, and they found Orania as that solution. Back then, in the 90s, Orania was a ghost town. It was a pioneer community where there was almost nothing. And if you understand where Orania is located, in the middle of basically a desert, you can understand there was a lot of hardship involved in starting there. Not only for us, for everyone who was pioneers, and even those who came later. So I spent my childhood years in Orania, although not born there, and growing up in such an extraordinary, such a different way than, you know, the mainstream kind of options. Well, it forces you to think about certain things, about why, about who you are and what you're trying to achieve. And you can't actually help but to think a certain way. You explore the world, but you always see some of the challenges that your community tries to help solve. And I left for a while, but I came back because you know, there's really no other option for me.
Why did you come back?
Because I believe the idea can work. I believe it is a community that is visionary in the way it's thinking. It is a place where Afrikaners can truly live and thrive
and
So,
preserve.
Just for the viewers, what are Afrikaners?
Oh, that's a good question. And it's the kind of question that people who oppose Orania also ask, because you know, people who want to do away with nationalist ideas and group identity and the identity of a folk, they always ask you to define something which is more than you can just define in words. So the easy answer is Afrikaners are the descendants of European peoples, including Germany, France, and the Netherlands, who settled in Africa about 400 years ago. And I always use this example with our American friends, is that my family, the Strydom family, moved to the Cape back in 1667, which is 100 years before the independence of America, right? So we've been 100 years before the Americans became independent. We've been in Africa. We're part of it. We can't be anything else.
It was just a VOC colony back then, right? So
Yes.
it wasn't related to the Netherlands, only to the VOC.
Yes. So
Jan van Riebeeck,
Jan van
right?
Riebeeck.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah,
wasn't
with
even a
Capricorn.
colony. It was just a halfway station to produce fruit and food for the guys on the way to India.
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
It was a good idea
South
to-
Sea shipping route.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes. So we still celebrate the coming of Jan van Riebeeck on the 6th of April.
Yeah.
It's a national holiday in Orania, and the only place in South Africa where that is the case. So we share a bit of connection there. And Afrikaners then moved there, and something started called the Vryburgers, which was farmers choosing not to be in the full-time employment of the company, but rather be free. And they were given freedom, although there was a lot of monopolies and things going that would some rebellions against the VOC and so on as well. But they started farming and moving inland. And then we spoke about the British and the wars and so on, and everything happening in Europe. Britain took over the control of the Cape. And
1806.
yes,
the final.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And we and the British didn't get along too well. So
Many such cases.
many such cases
They
indeed.
will always find a way.
to those who oppose the empire.
Yes.
Cheers.
The Afrikaners then actually formed as a unique nation, as a unique folk. I don't even like the word nation. It's misused in South Africa a lot. A unique folk.
So there was an ethnogenesis
Yes.
because of pressure from the Brits.
Yes, we actually tried to fight them, but it was unorganized and so on. There was a rebellion against British taxes, unfair policies. There was a major war with the Xhosa people, and the British they disbanded our security groupings and so on. And the people really got fed up.
So there was a war between the Afrikaners and the Xhosa.
Yeah, like 7 wars at that
Yeah.
stage.
Okay.
Frontier
And the
wars,
British
yes.
were undermining the Afrikaners.
Yes, they were supposedly helping us, but in a very inefficient way and denying us the right to secure our own farms and things like that. So, and there was very unusual punishment and a lot of labor disputes and stuff that the British just never took the side of the farmers. So there was a lot of issues, and the Afrikaners then decided. First, there was a small rebellion, not very successful. I actually have to tell the story. So, the British then, after a tax dispute, unfair tax dispute, one of the the early Afrikaners started a small war with the police, if you can put it in that way. And him and his comrades were convicted to die, to be hanged. And at that stage, if you got hanged and the rope breaks, you would be set free. You know, it's the finger of God cutting loose the rope. 6 of them were hanged, and 5 ropes broke.
Wow.
And the people appealed, and they said, "Listen, you know, this is totally unusual. Set these people free." And the British just took new ropes and hanged them again.
Why were the British so furiously against the Afrikaners?
Because if you oppose the empire, you know, that's the biggest sin that you can do. Whoever is in control, if you oppose this, which sometimes a unit, it's in South Africa now, if you oppose this idea of a unity state, of this, you know, that is what South Africa is currently as well. It's an empire. It's not a republic. Don't be fooled. It's not a very effective empire, but it is an empire. So the moment you oppose an empire, those with vested interests get very angry about that. So that's what happened. And then the unique solution of the Afrikaner was not to fight again, not to rebel. The English were very good at putting down rebellions, but much rather to just take their stuff and move. And they moved inland. A major part of the British tax base at this stage moved inland. They didn't really know how to treat it. They just said, listen, you can go to the equator, you will still be British citizens. But what's the catch? When you're 2,000 kilometers from the colony, no one can impose their laws on you.
Exerts power over them.
They can't.
Yeah.
So that is also what we believe in Orania, is the difference between de facto political power and de jure. What is supposed to be the legal system and what can be manifested. And so we still look at our ancestors and think, you had a very, very smart idea. It's a alternative, not that revolution, not reactionary politics, but proactive thinking, moving some way. And they settled in many republics. We love republics. If there's something that Afrikaners like, it's the idea of a republic. We built a lot. 2 of them really major ones. They survived, become the Free State and the Transvaal, and they got later on they got international recognition as the nations of the Boer people. So we got our freedom in that sense. Yeah.
Did the British ever recognize the Free State and Transvaal?
Yes.
Okay.
But maybe interesting you mentioned now the Boer republics. Maybe our listeners would like to know, because we are Afrikaners, but you have the Boers as well. The Boere, which means farmers, but that's also what we call ourselves. But those 2 republics were specifically Boer republics.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Boer is an ethnic ethnic group.
Yeah, but they're also Afrikaners.
It's synonym, Afrikaner and Boer.
Okay.
There are some people who say there's differences. I personally believe it's synonyms.
Yeah.
The Boer people, it's what we call ourselves for a very long time, and with the rise of Afrikaner nationalism, we focused more on Afrikaner.
It is more encompassing then, in that sense. Because historically, people lived in the Cape were Afrikaners, but they weren't seen as the Boer from the Boer republics.
Okay. Yes.
But it is in our best interest to just say we're Afrikaners, we're all.
Especially after the unification of South Africa done by the British or British interests in 1910, the republics and the colonies became one country, which is not a good idea. It's a typical empire idea.
It's a union then,
and then it's
to think it's a bit like the European Union, because South Africa is as big as Western Europe almost.
Yes.
Now imagine, and you're centralizing all that power into one union. You have so many different groups of people and cultures that clash, that wants to do stuff their own way.
Well, and clash it did.
Yeah, and it did, and it's still going on. And
it's still going on. Yeah. So if I look at South Africa right now, if I look at what's coming out of South Africa, when I look at in the news, on Twitter, for example, or X as it's now called, I see Julius Malema dancing, singing "Kill the Boer." So when he shouts "Kill the Boer," he's not talking just about farmers. He's talking about the Afrikaners. It's a call to ethnic cleansing, right?
Yes, it is a very clear call that a certain group of people, a certain nation, a certain folk doesn't have the right to exist. Denying us the right to exist. That is what it basically is. Killing is just the way that it should manifest, right? So it's denying us the right to exist. It's denying us the right to land. It's denying us the right to organize ourselves and educate our children and build our communities. It is flat out denial that we should exist, and that is the very base of it.
And Julius Malema, he is the 3rd biggest country political party in South Africa, right?
So the EFF is it's a clearly communist party. You can also see it in the way that they behave and the kind of clothing that they wear. They're red with red berets and so on. Very aggressive, They're not the only one of that type, but they are one of the bigger communist parties, if you exclude the national government at this stage, which is the ANC, also very rooted in communism. But yes, the EFF is definitely very aggressive in that pursuit. So it's concerning to see people like Julius Malema. He's not on his own in that regard either, but calling for people to be murdered.
Yeah, he's calling for genocide on whites.
Yes,
that's what it is, and many people support him as well. And I saw that even the court, South African court, said no, it's not a problem. You can't say kill the Boer. It's not a call to like.
It's not hate speech.
It's not hate speech.
Yeah.
Why? Because it was against whites.
Yeah.
I wanna just say something else. We decided not. Well, we do fight politically, just not in party politics necessarily. There are Afrikaner representatives and so on involved, but you must understand the reason why we don't fight politically primarily is because we are 2 million people roundabout, Afrikaners, in a country of more than 60 million people. Demographically, we just don't have the option to vote ourselves out of trouble.
It's a numbers game and we will lose it.
We'll lose it every time. However, we will use whatever tools to our disposal, whether that be party politics, other ways of meta politics or whatever, to survive and to get to a point where we can thrive. Orania is such an answer. Now it's very important to understand that Orania was not a reaction to Julius Malema. It was not even a reaction to the ANC. It was not a reaction to the change in 94. Orania starts much earlier. Actually, Orania's philosophical roots comes from a point where we say, okay, we have the right to exist. We have a major demographic problem, and the solution then to both continue to exist and to solve this demographic problem is to demographically concentrate. So it's not an isolationist approach. It is a approach of demographic victory, if I can put it in those terms. And thus the Orania idea was thought out long before the end of apartheid. Visionaries who can see where South Africa is going and what the reason is for that trajectory already realized that we should demographically concentrate. And thus Orania was founded before the end of apartheid in one of the most arid parts of South Africa. Very low rainfall, very undeveloped, and very important, very scarcely populated. So where can Afrikaners be a demographic majority?
Where there's no one.
Where there's no one else. So it takes sacrifice, and it's hard to convince people that they should move into the desert so that we can build an economy there, that we can, re-industrialize ourselves, that we can build educational facilities there. But the success of Orania in the past 30 years has started to attract more people. So currently we're still a small community. We're about 3,000 people. We have a total area of around about 15,000 hectares. With a core, almost city center, and then more rural development around it. We also have a support network in terms of about 6,000 card-carrying, monthly donating members around South Africa and internationally, and many people looking at Orania as a prospect. Our challenge is to grow our economy sufficiently so that they can also find a home there, and that they can also start a life there.
How should the viewer who's never been to South Africa get an idea of the current situation regarding safety, regarding infrastructure? How's the country functioning?
It's not.
Okay,
that's the short answer. Africa is not functioning. So Africa is surviving. Not to say that there's not a lot of very, very nice and beautiful things still in South Africa. Obviously, beautiful natural country and so on. But if we look at it from a governance perspective, you made a very important point. You said South Africa is about as big as Western Europe, but more diverse and managed much, much worse. Yeah. So what do you have? You have a country that states that it's got 12 official languages. There's no place on earth where you can be served in 12 official languages. It's just impossible. But it's a weak attempt to try and portray yourself as being inclusive, which is total nonsense. What happens? One or two gets dominant in public life. And that's exactly what happens in South Africa. So even the difference between, say, the Italian people and the Austrian people and the Dutch people, if you tried to manage all of them centrally, it would have been a problem. in first world countries. So if you do it in South Africa,
And the difference between the Italians and the Dutch aren't as big as the ethnic difference.
There's a lot of
cultural differences within South Africa.
yeah, and there you have the Zulu people and the Xhosa people, the Venda, the Pedi, the Khoisan, the Afrikaner, the British Afrikaans, or the British English-speaking South Africans, and so on. So very, very diverse, total different worldviews. In terms of how legal procedures should work. Morality, what's right and wrong, religion, and then culture and grouping and race and so on as well. So there's just, it's different worlds, and the South African empire forces from atop these people to not only live together, but they somehow want to portray this as a massive rainbow nation success, which it's not. So what is the situation? Well, since 1994. Where South Africa became the so-called new South Africa.
The Rainbow Nation.
Rainbow Nation,
And
democratic.
that's when apartheid ended.
End of apartheid.
And apartheid was what was the point of apartheid? Was it that the voting rights for everyone? That was the decisive part of the end of apartheid.
That's basically what changed.
That's
basically what changed. People still basically live where they lived. If the ANC describes their goals as to end poverty and discrimination and things like that, they did not succeed at all.
No.
It
actually became worse.
It became much worse. So you've got voting rights and so on, but people are massively impoverished. There's massive inequality and stuff like that. So it ended, and it's projected as this rainbow nation where everybody can just be, you have ample opportunity, although that's not real. It's written on a piece of paper. So, the Constitution guarantees your right to life, right to clean water, right to good housing. No one actually guarantees it. It's just the Constitution guaranteeing it, which is nonsense. So the Constitution can't guarantee anything. It just writes it down. Someone needs to actually fulfill that promise. So South Africa deteriorated significantly on multiple levels, including crime. And I think that's the one thing a lot of people know about. We in the car here, we spoke about South Africa being a net exporter of copper. We export more copper than we mine because of the staggering amounts of copper being stolen. It halts your infrastructure when power lines are being stolen on an industrial scale. It's organized gang stealing it from very amateur groups to very organized gang stealing electricity infrastructure. Our railways are being stolen off the tracks. I mean, can you imagine something like that here in Amsterdam? It's insane. So on the one hand, infrastructure decline, both physical and social infrastructure. On the other hand, the deterioration of any secure future. So it's one thing when your power is out, it's another thing when you get murdered. We speak about, I think it's 79, 80 murders per day in South Africa every day.
Last year then, there was 26,000 people murdered approximately, I believe. So we're technically in a war zone without there being any official war declared.
Just ethnic.
It's
war.
an ethnic war,
civil war.
Civil war,
But not really full blown with fronts, but just lingering violence, which is so hard.
Yeah.
Everyone gets affected by it. Also in the townships and so on, the informal settlements. However, obviously, our priority is to help Afrikaners, and if it's better in that regard for everyone else as well, it's good. We focus, getting our people out of miserable circumstances that they're in. Then I want to say, so it's infrastructure decline, it's physical safety, and then I've also added a third category, and that's the onslaught on Afrikaners through the legal system, which is 142 laws based on race in South Africa. More laws based on race than ever at the high point of apartheid. Including you.
People wouldn't think.
What kind of laws are these?
Excluding you out of the economy in multiple ways. We've got something we call BEE, which is in America it's well known as DEI. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. In South Africa, it's Black Economic Empowerment. Meaning that, for example, if you start a business and it's successful to an extent, you have to bring in a black partner to make it fair for the crimes of the past, right? So if it's a very successful company, you've got quotas on the people that you can hire, the people on your board of directors, the beneficiaries, the projects that you do, and so on. Screeching the economy to a standstill, When certain contracts are allocated, you need to be to black people and so on. So that's one part. There's many other things in terms of race-based laws, access to universities and schools and stuff like that. So you just pushed as the state, obviously, if you work for the state service, it's possibly worst of all there.
Yeah. I think normies who know about South Africa and about apartheid, they would think, oh, but it ended. So now everyone's happy. It's one big like
family
party, dancing around campfire, singing songs. but it's so much racial tension in every front. And may I ask you guys if you, in your own personal lives, when you, Nick, also lived there, did you? What are the most important events that shaped you or that made the most impact on you in terms of violence, racial violence, plaasmoorden, all these kind of things?
I live in the Cape area. I grew up. My whole life was in the Western Cape, and we lived outside Cape Town, which is more safer generally than the north of the country. But I mean, we all got, my car got stolen or stuff like that. But I had some friends. Luckily, nothing bad has happened to me or close family. But yeah, friends of my parents were on a farm. The woman's throat was slit, for instance. It touches everybody. You know, all of these stories.
Everyone knows someone.
Yeah, who's been murdered or brutally assaulted, or I know a girl was raped, for instance. But yeah, so we all have these stories. And then, big events that shaped me, that I remember the day that the new government came into power. I remember that day in school for the last time where we took down the old flag, and the teachers all cried on the stage and we had to raise the new flag. I remember then there's some good things when the World Cup football was in South Africa. There was almost a moment where we thought there's this unity. Everybody was friends with each other. It was a great time. Went to Cape Town to go watch it. For once, the trains were safe again, and people went on the trains. And my dad said, yes, it feels like in the old days when they used to go on the trains, which you can't do now. It's too dangerous for white people especially. But then it went downwards again. And there's moments like this that I remember, yeah.
And may I ask, how do you look down or look back to your time in South Africa now that you are in the Netherlands? Or in Europe, you're here for like 6 years now.
Yeah, 6 years.
What do you miss the most?
Yeah, number one, friends and family, of course. But my heart will always be in that country. And one day I would always like to have a foot there. I still have, but it is a country which our ancestors fought for dearly and paid a huge price. So I'll never give it up. And but the one good thing I think that happened with all the problems in South Africa is that so many Afrikaners went abroad, spreading our story. The world knows much more now about what's going on there than 20 years ago.
True. For instance, if Nick wants to come back to South Africa and he would want to go and live with you guys in Orania, how would that work? What's the application like?
So one must understand that Orania is always under threat from, well, both from antagonists, people who actually want to come there and, challenge our culture explicitly, going out to destroy what is ours and deny us that as well. So you got, aggressive kind of approaches towards that. And then people who genuinely just want a better life, but they are not Afrikaners. Right, so for example, people don't share our religion, or they don't share our culture, or they are not Afrikaners, but it seems safe and so on. So for those two reasons, we have an application process, which is basically on a micro scale what you could compare to immigration. So we want to know who you are. We want to know if you're an Afrikaner, what are the reasons coming to Orania for? Can you speak Afrikaans? And what's your criminal and drug background? So
do you also do a family background check?
No, we just do personal criminal background check, and drug use is strictly forbidden in Orania. Yeah. So we have a zero tolerance policy for that. So those are some of the things we look at and part of the administration process to keep our people and our community safe. And then the second part would be to speak. I don't want to call it an interview because it's more a conversation. Yeah. The applicant must also be comfortable with what we are. We are a growth point for Afrikaner freedom. We are Christian Afrikaner Protestant people.
Protestants, okay.
Yeah, we are Protestants. So from that standpoint, the person moving there must also understand that. Do you want to openly associate with us? Yeah. And do you want to settle there in that regard as well? You must know who we are, and we must know who you are. Yeah. So that is the part of the interview, right? And then the third leg is an orientation process where we share the history of Orania, why we have certain strategies in certain terms, why we were doing things in a certain way. And the final part is the unofficial part. And that's just the community. So one could jump through the hoops in the first three parts, the administrative process, the interview and the orientation, and just do it to just get in. But the community must accept you. And that's not a formal process. They accept you or they do not accept you. And that is a natural thing, that's the way people think and do and act. So I always say that's the unofficial leg of right to residency in Orania, also the most important leg towards that. And we see a lot of people from abroad coming back to South Africa. They want to come back to their country of birth, the country of their identity, the country of their language. They do not want, however, to come back to South Africa as the ANC-run empire. Yeah. And for that reason, they return, but not to wherever they lived before they went to England, Australia, or the Netherlands, or wherever, but to Orania. So we have a lot of people who lived in Europe coming back. Yeah. So we'll keep a door open for you.
Oh, thank you.
And what if, because of course, next to ethnicity, background, culture, also religion plays a part.
Yes.
What if Nick, for instance, was a Catholic?
No, everyone can be saved. We'll just convert him.
But it's not like a prerequisite that you have to be a member of the church, or is it so that to go to Orania that you have to be a practicing Christian?
So our standpoint on that is you cannot test someone's heart. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
We prefer people being part of the church, not only for the reason we think that's the best vehicle for your religion, but also because it's a support network, an important one in a very traumatized and very hurt country, with a lot of people also problems also under Afrikaners. So we prefer people being members of churches. We do not prescribe which, although we are a Protestant community. We don't prescribe, you must be in the Reformed Church or in the APK or whatever. That is their own choice. We also don't go knocking 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning to see if you're in the church or so. We say you can't look into someone's heart. Obviously, we want to structure our town and all our official institutions based on our Christian faith. And we hope that is enough for people to voluntarily, embrace the formal structures of religion as well. I think there's a big contrast between conservative religious people in Europe and in South Africa. Afrikaner conservatives are Protestant. There is very, very, very small Catholic footprint in South Africa, but it's small.
Of course, yeah.
But back here, it seems like the Protestants are the liberal ones, or more inclined and the Catholics are the more traditional ones. So that's just something interesting.
And you went to the 4 stages it is of the application, with the last one being a more informal one. And what happens then? So you went through all of that. How do you get a place to live, to find a job? How do you?
Do you have to build your own house?
You have to, do you have to build your own house, for instance, or how does that work? So you went through all of that, and what now?
Yes, that's a good question, because I think that's one of the things most people have a lot of questions about, obviously. So to understand Orania foundationally, you must understand the history of labor relations in South Africa. And labor in South Africa, which started with slave labor under the Dutch East Indian Company, and later on just what became cheap black labor under apartheid, changed South Africa demographically a lot. So firstly, Orania's standpoint is we must do our own work, right? And you guys know, with the amount of immigrants coming here to do the menial labor, the things that people don't want to do anymore in a first world country, the not so nice jobs, With that, you change your demographics forever.
Yes.
So if you say that demographics is destiny and you're willing to move to a place to become a majority, you cannot be doing the exact same mistakes that you've done in the past to get people to come do your menial labor and then change your demographics again.
You have to do it yourself.
You have to do it yourselves. Yeah. That means, well, as we call it, volks eie arbeid. Labor from your own folk, right? So you don't have to build your own house, but someone from your folk needs to build your house, even if you then pay them to do that. You can build your own house. We encourage that. Labor is always good for mind and body and spirit. But the option of having a construction team doing it is good, as long as they're Afrikaners. The second thing is, no one can say that Orania is exploiting cheap black labor. We are not participating in a system that keeps anyone back. We are not keeping anyone back. We're not exploiting anyone. We're not slaving anyone. Orania is building a future for ourselves, and no one can claim, well, I had to build that for you, and now you're plucking the fruits of that labor.
What is happening in the Netherlands, for instance, when the workers from Turkey, Morocco came here after the Second World War. Now, if we...
To make cheap light bulbs.
Sorry, yeah.
To make cheap light bulbs.
Yeah, or work in like the factories and stuff. And the idea was that they would only stay here for a bit to help. And they could get some money for their families. And in the end, they would go back.
They never left.
They never left. And now, some of them are more integrated than others. But we feel that the newer generations are even further off Europeans, like our civilization and everything that has to do with us, and they're more prone to attack their host country, and we can't. We are not entirely possible. It's not possible for us to criticize that, because they're like, but hey, my parents came here, or my great grandparents came here,
built this country,
and they built it. Like after the Second World War, you didn't want to do anything anymore. We did all of that.
We're a fourth generation of benefits. You should be thankful to us.
So we have that problem. Because they did some labor, but now they claim they did all of it after the Second World War, which is not true.
Yeah. That's also the same fact in South Africa. You know, the Boer people, you know, historically speaking, are not lazy people. They are very hard workers.
Yeah, of course. Otherwise, you can't go to a piece of land in the world which has nothing, and you build a country out of nothing.
Yes.
So there has to be something in
absolutely
that folk. Yeah.
So what we did is to multiply our efforts, is to use cheap black labor to multiply that, and that led to demographic changes in South Africa, which is now very, very, very hard to have a piece of land for ourselves, because the demographics just changed to that extent. So I think you must understand that fundamental question to understand Orania. So if you want to, we always say South Africa don't have a solely economic problem, or solely a security problem, or solely a business problem. You know, business problems you solve with business. Economic problems you solve with good economic policy. Security problems you solve with good military or police. Those are issues in South Africa. But Afrikaners specifically also have a demographic challenge. A challenge of being a small minority, no political say, little economic say, and few influence on our own safety and security. Concentration politics is the word that we use. So if you want to work with concentration politics, concentrating in one area, you must follow that through with labor policy. And be mindful, I think Europe has got a lot of problem with politicians inviting foreigners in. Yeah. But it's also got the economic problem of cheap labor.
True.
So the politicians bring in a lot of beneficiaries, but people unwilling to do their own menial work, or wanting more comfort rather than more freedom, bring in people just as laborers. So be mindful of that as well. I think it's the lesson that we learned in a very hard way is also in front of Europe's door.
Yeah, but I think Afrikaners have a bigger feeling for their community and their people, and I think in the Netherlands we have lost that sense of community.
Yeah.
For doing
it's
something.
Also obviously because just from the beginning, from the Cape Colony on, it has been a community building it.
Yeah, you had to do it together.
Yes,
there was nothing there.
There's nothing there.
Yeah.
They did not inherit anything in the first generation.
Yeah.
Challenges, risk, and fears of security brings you closer to God and closer to your people. If you are going to die if you don't work together, and if you might die, you know, you're just a lot closer to God and a lot closer to the people around you. So in that regard, Africa's got its advantages.
How high is the birth rate in Orania?
Unfortunately, we are still too small and we don't have the mechanisms to measure that accurately, because the state can force you to register. We don't force people in Orania yet to register their babies locally. I can say there's a lot of large families in Orania. That's definitely the case. So that helps. But still, our primary growth is from people moving there, embracing the idea and wanting more freedom and safety.
When did you become leader of Orania, or CEO, I should say?
At the Orania movement, I started in this current role at 2019.
2019. And what was the situation back then in Orania when you took over?
In terms of growth and so on. So, well, I can say this
because when Orania was already there.
Okay.
But there before there were only the settlement.
Yes.
And it's built upon that. But I imagine that for the past 10 years there must have been a big improvement there.
Yes. Well, I must firstly say that is due to a very broad leadership structure that we have in Orania. We always say we have got such tremendous depth over a broad area of Orania leadership. We have, the Orania Representative Council and the Town Council and the Orania Movement, the Orania Development Company and the Vryheidsstichting and more and more and more. So there's so many people so involved, a lot of them officially, a lot of them also in voluntary roles for which they do not get paid. But in the past 10 years, Orania doubled in population the first 5 and doubled again in the next 5.
Wow.
Yes. So back in... that is the case from, say, 2023, 10 years back. So 2013 to 2023, that basically happened. From 800 to 1,600 to 3,000. So
huge.
Yeah, so that's very good. And in terms of institutions, we've grown a lot. Our safety and security under the very good work of the role players there.
You have private security, or how can, or it's not the police.
Well, in South Africa, the private security sector is I think, twice as big as the police and the military combined.
Of course,
Because that's who's keeping the people safe. Again, the Constitution says the police must keep the people safe and the military must protect us. The reality is private security does it. It's just the reality.
And who pays private security in South Africa? Because when I was there was private security everywhere, but I never really understood how
everybody, you have an abonnement per month and you pay them depending on how much protection you need.
Subscription.
It's a subscription.
And safety is bought.
Yeah.
Isolation in estates, which is a big thing in South Africa. So you've got a fenced estate. Access to that is bought. So that's good. That is the same way a refugee status in the US is a solution for some people, and I think it is. But it's not a solution for a folk.
No.
And it's not a solution for a folk to have estates, where only the rich can have access and only the rich can have security and only the rich can have good education. It's good that they have it. To some extent, the people with the means to do so is keeping our people going, for educating their children and so on. However, Orania is not aiming to serve a percentage. It's aiming to become an answer for a folk, for a people. So you must think differently. So there is very safe places in South Africa. After about you go through 3 checkpoints in a state. We go through first one and then a second one, and then your house is also like a little fortress, and you can buy that. You can buy that safety. But the goal of Orania is to ensure that for a broader population. So what we have is private security. Why? It's the vehicle. It's the pragmatic way. It's the vehicle that we could find to register a legal professional security company in accordance to the SIRA Act in South Africa, which regulates private security, but it's a full affiliate of our town council. So they do 2 things. They keep public order in various ways, and they secure the people of Orania. And one of the ways, because we don't really have funds, we still must pay all our taxes to the South African government, right? So everything we do, except local levies and so on, municipal levies, everything we do is extra. We must fund it. So the people of Orania pays a small monthly fee for the security company, but also we're trying to get more work in the broader area to help in the broader area where we can bring in private funds to help fund this private security initiative of ours.
It's like a business almost.
We have to run Orania as a business in some regards, because how else would you do it? We don't have taxpayers paying us, So everything in Orania must stand on its own legs. Let me give you another example. In South Africa, we've got something called load shedding, right? It's the inability of the national energy provider to provide electricity for the whole of South Africa. What they had to do is they implement rolling blackouts, formalized, structured according to a set program.
Yeah, you get like a notification on your phone, right?
Power is about to go off.
Yeah.
So when it was at its worst, it's been going, I think, since 2010. When it was at its worst, 6 stage 7, 12 hours a day without electricity. Yeah. Broken into either 2-hour or 4-hour portions. So where you don't have electricity.
Yeah. I think it started in 2008. I remember that where I was working the first time, and it was ridiculous. People couldn't believe it.
Before that, this wasn't a problem,
Not
right?
at all. We exported electricity to Southern Africa.
In 2003, Eskom won an international prize for best energy provider in the world.
Yeah,
2003.
And it was cheap, and it was efficient.
Then they applied like diversity kind of things. They just hired the blacks
and sort of.
Well, industrial level stealing.
Yeah,
millions and millions of rands per day for 20 years.
Sabotage as well.
Yeah, so they build a power plant and then they steal the machines from it. They steal the generator.
I must check up the facts again, but there was something X amount of million per day for 25 years or something like that. It was stolen. It is a lot of money. Anyway, so that's the problem. Blackouts, and then if you add to that, there's also now water shedding where some places don't have water for, also because of infrastructure. You add to that the industrial level of copper cable theft. There's a lot of times without electricity in South Africa. So what's the solution? Well, we had to privatize both generation of electricity in Orania and the storage. And there was a fantastic work of Orania, which is Orania's energy independence project. Yeah. So they had two approaches. One is to grow generation. So Orania is the municipality in South Africa with the most friendly policy towards individual homeowners and business owners putting electricity back into the grid, whether that be businesses or homes. So they put solar panels on their houses, and the municipality pays them very, very handsomely to feed into the grid. And then a communal project through Orasol to also generate power. And then recently we got a battery, which was a phenomenally expensive project, funded by investors, and they get like 12%, 11% return on investment for their investments in our project, which we then pay back to them. So you have to think like a business owner, like an entrepreneur, in order to build solutions inside the legal framework of South Africa and inside the practical challenges that we as Afrikaners face.
Yeah, and may I ask, what is your background then? What did you study something?
Yeah. I did communications and anthropology, and then I did economics, philosophy, and politics.
Yeah. And how old were you when you became the leader?
Oh, well, I can't remember, like 27, I think, at the Oranian movement.
Yeah, but most people would say, whoa, that is a very, actually, young age to carry all those burdens of a people.
Yeah, as I said, luckily Orania's got so many leaders. I think of Gavi at the town council, France, Orania Development Company, which focuses a lot on the economic realities in Orania, breaking out bottlenecks. Rian Jacobs at both at Orasol and at the Orania Representative Council, many other people that I can name. Etienne and Tiens at Safety and Security. There's so many people. Yeah. You know, the people that's running Orania's bank, which is a co-op bank. You know, such an amount of leadership. We are blessed. That's why we say don't count us. 3,000 not a lot. You can weigh us. You know, that's the way to test us. Yeah.
True. And so what is the goal of Orania? Do you want to become like a state within a state, or would you like to keep on going? How you're going now? What do you want for Orania for the future?
That depends on the level of threat.
Yeah.
Professor Karel Boshoff, one of the founders of Orania, always said, sovereign if it must, federal if it can. Right. So we must also think ahead. In terms of surviving long term in South Africa, good local relations also important. You know, the situation, for example, that the Israelis is in of perpetual war against neighbors. I don't think it can be sustainable for Afrikaners in that regard. There's some similarities in terms of the desert kind of development, developing the potential of a very underdeveloped area. But we can't think in terms of perpetual war. We must think in terms of a stable and secure future in Africa. So for that reason, I always say Orania must be a force of stability, not a force of instability. And there's many things we can do. We can, for example, export power, export electricity from Orania to the rest of the country. And we can both make money out of it and other people can have electricity. It's
and your generations won't be stolen.
Yes.
The generators won't be stolen.
Yes.
Which is
But, at heart, what are we? We are Republican people. We love republics. We want to have republics. We want to build republics. I think, as I recently said, we might have some kind of world record in establishing the most republics. And, and we had the Republic of Graaf-Reinet, Swellendam. We had the Free State. Goosen, Stellaland, exactly. Transvaal, Free State. There are so many. But we must do accordance to what is necessary. If people go out chanting they want to kill us and genocide us, then we need more drastic changes. If the people of the now ruling party of Zimbabwe said that Afrikaners are African people, so we're getting recognition from the north of us, which we did not expect. But that is the kind of sentiment that we need.
Because they said this. I read this tweet, which was you're African people because they need your economic power, right?
And yes, they admitted it.
You know, it is not the emotional call to genocide, which the EFF is. It's quite a rational choice to think, okay, it's better if they're on our side than against us.
And produce food on farms.
Exactly.
Things like
but
that.
They just want they want white labor, white intelligence, white innovation, creativity.
Yes. As long as we have a national home, if we have a place, you can't be a people without a place. You can't be a folk without a place. If you don't have a place, we are rooted into something. We are rooted into nature. We are rooted into constructing in architecture. Those are physical things. You can't take a folk, the idea of a folk, and just abstract it to something that can float around. Yes, I understand people want to go to America, and it's good for them. But it's an individual solution. It's not a folk solution. It's not for the totality of your people. You will become Americans, as many Afrikaners have become Canadians, Australians, New Zealanders, and Englishmen, and so on. So I understand if people want to go. So Africa is dangerous. It's not going well. But we must understand their children will be Canadians.
Yes,
maybe the strongest ones will still embrace it and teach their kids Afrikaans and so on. But one generation later, they will be Canadians or Americans. Yeah. So if we want to survive as a people, we need a place, we need a home. That's what we're building in Orania.
And
you're taking this very seriously. So when we were in the car here, you said you have a big delegation, and you're working mostly on the political side. If I'm correct in describing this, but you also have a group with you who is focusing on building equipment.
Yes.
So, and schooling. So can you tell a bit more about that? So then I think that really gives an impression about the seriousness of this undertaking.
As almost revolutionary as our labor practices is. So just take this for a moment. You have the opportunity in South Africa to make major economic success, although it's going bad. The economic success of embracing cheap black labor and building a little empire for yourself, right? You must understand it in that regard. It's still possible to become quite rich in South Africa if you're willing to just free market everything and just think in terms of the more people I can employ, the more work I can get done, the richer I can become. So that's fine. As I explained Orania to an Austrian guy recently, and he said, so this labor thing, and I thought, this Austrian guy won't understand it because they don't have the same issues that we do, and historically they do their own work. They say, no, I understand. With foreign labor, as we call it in Orania, you privatize the revenue, the gain, you privatize for yourself, but you socialize the cost. I thought that was very striking. Anyway, so as revolutionary as our labor practices are politically or ideologically, as revolutionary are they practically? Because now you have to say, well, we have a free market in Orania. You need to, stand on your own feet in terms of business. But we also have certain requirements. It's not free in every regard. Cheap, you can't just bring in cheap black labor and just exploit that for your own personal gain. There's certain moral requirements as well. You can't open a brothel in Orania, right?
Casino.
So it's not just total free market. It's free market internally, but free market with requirements.
I'm starting Orania 2, which is next with the brother.
The Dutch.
You're one of those. You're one of those.
If Orania is that good, why is there no Orania 2?
Here we go. Go on. Sorry.
So free market with requirements, I would say. So in that regard, it's political and ideological, but there's also physical things. So in South Africa, you've got construction teams with 30, 40 black guys just doing all the work, or farms where that's the same case. Now we have to think anew about construction, because a town growing 10 to 15% per year, you need to construct a lot of houses. And if you can't do it fast enough, it gets expensive because you've got high demand, low supply. So we came to Europe also to let our construction guys learn from some of the practices here, with much more automated, much more machinery, much more automation, and so on. So that's the one facet. The other one is training. So we started a college in 2019, started with 5 students to teach them trades. The next year, 50 students. Yeah. Now we have more than 211 full-time students, 90% of them coming from outside Orania to come study there. Oh, wow. We now are accredited for masonry, electrician, plumbing, diploma in civil engineering. We do agriculture. We are one of very few agricultural schools and colleges in South Africa. We do frail care, caregivers, and we do early childhood development. Yeah. So it's a college. It's post-high school training. Our goal for 2030, I spoke to Hanlie Pieters at Boer Opleiding. She said 1,000 students. That's the goal for 2030.
Oh, that's good.
And we'll change our economy in that regard. So we need to learn new ways. That's the long story now, but we need to learn new ways to do labor, to do training, we must change our thinking in that regard. Progressive in our thoughts, conservative in our identity, I think is the root.
So no gender studies, none of that nonsense.
None of that nonsense. You won't get a job in Orania in that regard.
Great,
there's not a lot of pioneering communities where that is in high demand.
Good.
You know.
There's no rainbow street crossings.
Yeah, good. Keep it like that. Orania is very, very, very safe compared to the rest of the country. But I saw, I think last week, that I think of the first murders, maybe even the first murder has happened.
Yes, it is the first.
Would you like to talk about this tragedy?
Yes, let's definitely. We need to speak about this. So, first of all, you can go back into many interviews that I did. I said, do not say Orania is crime-free. There's no, we're not in heaven. There's no place on earth where everything is just perfect. So Orania has had other crimes in the past as well. Luckily, never murder before until this, and it is important to understand that bad things also happen. Afrikaners are not angels.
No, we're all human.
We're human. Yeah. We're human, and we're sinful people, and bad things happen. If you compare Orania, however, to the rest of South Africa, the past 35 years, one murder, it was a crime of passion, the first one in 35 years, I think Orania is dramatically safer than the rest of South Africa, where you have 80 per day. So it's a stark contrast. Yeah. So what happened is a man and his estranged wife had issues. And tragically, he first shot her and then himself, no murder-suicide. So it really is tragic. As earlier I said, don't test us on where we currently are. Test us on, expedite our growth trajectory. So don't test us on this tragic incident that happened. And we must publicly say it did happen and it's bad and so on. Rather test us in our reaction. The way that Orania's own services, our parallel social services, our parallel security services, our parallel ambulance services, our parallel community services, how all of them reacted. And yet again, I must say the great work being done by Bianca Pieters and Tien's Vessels and all the people involved, and the ambulance and the caregivers and everyone who handled it. It is also, although tragic, there's no state in the world where there's no murders. How you react to them, how your services are implemented to handle these things, how your social services treat the poor child that's being left alone after this horrible incident. Those are the important tests for a people. And I think that is what we can learn from this.
And are you getting now more critics from like the ANC? Are they trying to take this one situation and try to counter it on you?
I think they have their hands full with a lot of murders in the rest of the country. There's obviously a lot of social media people, criticizing us. Yeah. Sooner or later, this would have happened. If your goal is to grow to settle 1 million Afrikaners in the region, well, yes, something like that is due to happen.
Of course.
And that's why I say test us on our systems. I think we handled it well as such a tragic incident can be handled. But a lot of people are criticizing. I don't care about that too much. I care about our people in Orania, how that is, and how we can prevent future tragedies such as these and handle them when they happen. Things like these happen in any state in the world. So that's the test.
Yes. How often does it happen that you have outreaches to other black communities within South Africa? Because they also face the same problems as everybody, and there's a lot that they can learn from how the Afrikaners are doing it in Orania. We actually have a formal memorandum of understanding with the Xhosa community in the Eastern Cape, Mnyameni. Yeah. And the reason why we have it is they face similar challenges. Exactly. They approached us and said, "Listen, how can you guide us in terms of local self-determination?" We said, well, here's a lot of things that we figured out in a span of 35 years, which we learned with blood, sweat and tears, and here's a blueprint. Yeah. Listen, we're not sharing our resources. The little resources that we have is collected by Afrikaners from Afrikaners, and we're going to use it for Afrikaners. However, ideas we can share. We want those people to have safe and stable communities. It's good and well. Is it only the Xhosas, not the other groups?
We get a lot of visits from traditional black communities to come to Orania and come learn. The Barulong people have been there, facilitated by the Barend Ice. We've had the people of Mnyameni, I said, the Amabele people. We've had Genadedal from the Cape, which is also embracing local independence. People in Springbok, a coloured community close to Rustenburg. These people come and say, how are you doing these things? Yeah. And we say, well, here are some ideas. Let me just jump into that for a second. The big debate in South Africa is land, right? All of you saw expropriation without compensation is the new buzzword. What does it mean? It means the state can take your land and give it, well, basically to the black inhabitants of South Africa. As the president very clearly say, we're going to take land from white people and give it to our people. Who's our people? Is it the citizens of South Africa? No, it's excluding some citizens of South Africa. So, but that's not so unique, because many of the traditional black communities in the time of Hendrik Verwoerd were very much empowered by the early days, in the early days of so-called separate development. And they had loyalty to Verwoerd. And when the ANC started getting power, they started undermining the chiefs that were loyal to him and so on. So many of them now have communities where they have local power granted by the state, but the land under their feet is in a trust, and the trust is managed by the government. What does it mean? If you're a dissident to the state,
Dissidents mentioned!
If you're a bit of a dissident, or you're not agreeing with service delivery locally or so, the state can take your land away, even if you're black, because it starts becoming a political game. Yeah. So some people even ask us, I won't say the tribe's names who visit us for that reason, but they even ask us, how can we become the owners of the land that we have in our areas? Because the state now controls it. And you guys in Orania achieved the privatization of that. And you have more control over your land than we as black people have. We must be we must be good little sheep in the row for the ANC, or we lose that as well. So that's some of the conversations that's very interesting in Orania. Lessons from Orania.
Because I think leftists would say that Orania are racist, but this isn't the case. You share your ideas with other races in South Africa who want to do the same thing for their people. You don't share the resource, but you share the ideas, so they have some idea what to do with a piece of land if they ever get their hands on that.
Absolutely. So they're living on their land, and it's formally recognized as a trust or as a this or as a that, but they know that the government can pull that rug from underneath very quickly.
Even though they are black.
Yes.
So the government is also
well, some of the worst things that happened during the 90s and the civil unrest, the 80s and 90s, were the IFP and the ANC, two political parties contesting for government power, doing to one another. That's where the famous necklacing comes from. If you don't know what that is, so you take a tire around the neck and fill it with fuel and ignite it so that you burn to your death. So that is locals doing it to one another. So one must understand that the political power, that's a horrific thing. If you do anything to cling on to that, now currently Afrikaners are in the government sides, but can be anyone else, not agreeing with them.
You already see it with the BEE system. First off, it started helping people who are not white to get the quota system for jobs. But as it changed over time, colored people and Indian people also got lower ranks like us. And,
Indians as well.
Yeah, as well. So you see how discriminatory it is even within the non-white communities, groups.
Yeah. Some colored guy told us recently, first we weren't white enough and now we're not black enough. We always lose.
And Nick, to get back to you, may I ask why you left South Africa and came to the Netherlands?
Yeah, many people ask me on the street, oh, you left because of the crime or that. No, I was never fleeing any crime. I had a relatively good life in South Africa. But there were challenges, of course. And I've never been to Europe and I got the opportunity to come here. So I took it. I don't have a family and it was easy to come here then and to come see what Europe could offer me. And so in a sense, it's a safe way to also spread my wings financially also as a backup and to come experience Europe. And then I found your party, which I'm very happy to work for because we all fight the same struggle. And when coming here, I could see the same issues we face in South Africa is becoming a reality here.
Yeah, so you're for the listeners, Nick works at our party. He does everything that has to do with video editing, graphic design, and
so you can make us look good on this podcast as well.
Yeah. No, you look great. You know what I say, black don't crack, right?
We're not that African.
But Nick, now that you heard the stories of Orania, are you inspired to remigrate yourself back to your country?
Well, I must first go visit it. But I mean, I've been following Orania since I was young. And my grandmother, she went to visit it. People always say, yeah, why don't you go visit Orania? It is about, we discussed it earlier, about 9 hours drive with the car from where I'm from. So it's not that easy to just quickly go visit it.
Yeah, it's not like the Netherlands.
No.
But which is also 9 hours just in a 10-kilometer span.
The traffic. Yeah, exactly. But no, the idea of Orania is a beautiful idea, and I must go have a look there.
And Massimo, you went to South Africa. When 3 months ago,
I was in Cape in the end of January, beginning of end of February, beginning of March, I think.
And that was your first time there.
Yes, it was my first time in South Africa.
Can you take us with you if you would like to tell us about your experiences there? Take us with you back to that time.
First of all, I was in the Cape province, which is the most European part of South Africa, and everybody says, "Yeah, this is not South Africa." But the people, what I realized is the South African people, the Afrikaners especially, they are so nice. Whenever you tell them, "Well, I'm Dutch," they will invite you over. Let's have braai together. Let's have brandy together. And they have very high alcohol tolerance.
You also experienced that, I think.
Yes. Yeah. You do realize how much apart, how separated you live. When I was in Cape Town, after a week, I realized the different how South Africa has changed. You can see it in the architecture. So if you look at the old architecture, it's Cape Dutch. So they're typically Dutch houses, but more.
We're gonna show it on the screen.
Yeah, great. They have more colors. They look like old Dutch farms. But the new architecture, for example, you don't have any windows on ground level. On ground level you have a door and a garage door.
Oh yeah.
And above it you have an electric fence with 10,000 volts. And that's where the house begins. But on the ground level, you have a big steel door behind which you park your car, and the door where you enter your house. That's just because the streets are, I think, too unsafe to have windows on that level. and that really made me realize that this country is these people are fortifying themselves from the rising crime rates. You have endless shanty towns outside of Cape Town, but Cape Town was really where I was staying, which was at Greenpoint, was really nice and safe. You just go walk the streets alone at night.
All the yuppies from Amsterdam in the winter, they all go to
many Dutch people there in Blondie's. Which is a bar there, and they all say, "Oh yeah, I'm here for 3 months and just working. It's very cheap, and I get a Dutch salary." And
living the dream.
Yeah, they were living a good life over there. But I went to Stellenbosch, Franshoek too, and the most interesting conversations. Well, the Afrikaners are great, and they're very similar to Dutch, but they have more of a fighting spirit than the Dutch. So the Dutch really think, "Oh, it doesn't bother me. Well, it will be all right." Well, the Afrikaners, they have the same. They laugh the same way the Dutch laugh. They enjoy the same things the Dutch enjoy, but they are locked in. They are always, they realize if there's a problem, they need to solve it themselves, and that was really nice to experience. I realized how big the cultural difference was with when I spoke to my taxi driver. And he was Kosa, I think. And he said, "Yeah, I always vote for the ANC, and I will always keep voting for the ANC because we the Kosa, we have a culture of kings, and you just don't betray the king." And then I realized, yeah, okay, so you have a democracy. Thank you. Yes. So we're living in a democracy, but there's no democratic mindset, and that's why. There's no democratic mentality because there's obviously the ethnic differences are so much bigger than the political differences that the parliament is an expression of demographic relations.
That's exactly what it is.
And but I really liked it, and I really want to go back and visit the more African parts of South Africa, and not just the tourist.
The wilder parts.
Yeah, the wilder parts.
And the more Afrikaner parts.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like Orania.
Yeah, we should visit and make a documentary there.
We should, yes.
Yeah.
I think it's a very good idea.
And
but I had one more question for Joost. When you look at how you look at Europe too, and you see Europe changing too. And we had a discussion if whether we believe in a political solution to the current situation. But how are you looking at what's happening here, and how are you? Where do you see Europe on this developmental scale from a decent place to Gauteng?
Yeah, just worried. I'm worried. I'm concerned, I think. I don't think we've got all the answers. We've got in Orania we have a sense of alternative answers, third option answers, not just Republican or Democrat, free market or communist, but third options. What's the third option? I honestly am not sure that that we have a one size fits all solution to European politics. I think, as we spoke in the car as well, there's a lot of difference. I think the Orania model offers some insight into the South Africanization of the West, the coming changes here. I think. Our conversation about demographics, our conversation about the relationship between economy and demography, our solutions in terms of concentration politics, all of those things is solutions that we offer. How you're going to implement those solutions, I think it depends on you. It's not only the Egyptians who built the pyramids. The pyramids also built the Egyptians. Going out and constructing something like that, it changes you as a people. It's a conversation we have a lot with some of the local tribes in South Africa. We speak in Orania self-determination, how we struggled and pioneered and raised funds to do something, and now 30 years later we have some measure of success in Orania with it. And then they come there and they're inspired and they say, yes, we need this self-determination, we need the college, and we're we're going to petition the state to give us that, so we can also have self-determination. It's you can't think like that.
Yeah, but
you know, self-determination is the act of building those things, and that changes you.
Yeah.
You know, going through those challenges, all theoretically, it's all wonderful doing it. But the moment you face reality, real people, a real local government, real influence, real hard decisions, real ideological things, real labor questions, when you face those things, it change you, and you now must look at new solutions. And going through that change is also important. So what my message basically is yes, I am saying to Europeans, concentrate in one place. Demographics might help save you. Yes, build alternatives, build real, tangible, parallel institutions, as we did with Orasol or Orania Veiligheidsdienste, which is our security service, or our local municipality, or whatever. Build parallel institutions. It will save your life. It will not only save you from bad service delivery, it will save your life, most probably. And it will save the future of your people if you have such things. But it's also a question of, building that will change your mindset. It's just the fact. And I think this we spoke about some of the things that you did, like a school and an app to connect entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of things that you need to be speaking about.
Yeah, because you asked me if I believed in a political solution, and I told about the current political situation in the Netherlands and the big right-wing parties, which are the PVV, which does has a purely political approach, and FVD, which is a way more cultural approach, and FVD is truly trying to build something. So we had our own school, we have our own app connecting entrepreneurs, we have our own magazine, even show it.
Yeah, we have the biggest youth movement.
We're the biggest youth movement in the Netherlands. We have our own magazine in which we obviously interviewed you recently.
Here.
For the
Do you have any other good content as well?
Yeah, we interviewed
that is your standard.
Jared Taylor, which was
we
great.
interviewed Mr. Taylor.
No, I'm just
we interviewed some poems, something on Goethe. So much.
Fantastic.
And we do
It
this
looks like
twice
a
a year, so we
treasure
really
trove of
try to build ideas from where people will build on. But the big problem with the Netherlands compared to South Africa is that is a lack of space. So in South Africa, you could buy this barren land, and the state is so dysfunctional that you can get away with. You do get oppressed to some extent, but you can try
figure
to
out ways around it.
Yeah, you can figure ways around it, and you can build enough power to give an answer to this, to provide electricity to the region. And in the Netherlands, this is not possible. So the space in which FVD can operate is very different from Orania, but I do believe our mentality is similar, that we need space for ourselves, we need to build space, we need to take space.
How do you rethink space? How do you rethink current apartment blocks? How do you rethink even national borders? With a concentration on the one hand on the Belgium with the Flemish, and on the other hand with conservative thinking Dutch or whatever. I don't know. I'm just saying things that comes into my mind. But how do you rethink the current space? How do you rethink the online space? How do you rethink spaces of socialization and clubs? How do you rethink those things? I don't think we have all the answers for you, but there's some ideas coming to mind. Reimagine things. Having a physical magazine, a very important step forward. I mean,
buy it.
A while ago, not so long ago, 20 years ago, Oranians were sitting around a table thinking, how on earth are we going to have influence in newspapers, that people can read our idea? How can we ever fund our own magazine or our own newspaper? It will be, we don't have the money, we don't have the writers, we don't have the people. And now with social media, everything changed. Now we have a massive audience over multiple platforms. Now that's not our biggest concern anymore. Things change. So how do we rethink space? How do we rethink mechanisms and methods to our disposal? And that's the fighting spirit. I mean, yes, you say that you see it in Afrikaners and not necessarily on all the Dutch people, but the fact that we're sitting here in a studio which you own, with people either employed or voluntary working here, with microphones, with good wine imported from South Africa, it's things that you made possible by whichever means that you had to use to create such a thing. And you have it. Maybe 10 years ago you didn't have a studio.
True.
You didn't have a video editor. Now you have. What's the next step? How can you expand on that? And the fighting spirit is not something that you have or not have. You also build it by doing things like this and struggling and sometimes winning elections and sometimes losing elections.
True.
And you go on. You're still here we are, and we are going forward. So I think that is the key, redefining how you think about space. And you must, as I said, liberal in your identity, liberal in your thoughts, conservative in your identity. You must be progressive in your thoughts, redefine, rethink. Our opponents, the so-called progressives, has lost all sense of progression. They are stuck. Massive opportunity for us.
Our party, for Democracy, we always had this utopic idea to have our own piece of land, which we now call Forumland, but it's not a great
Worst name ever.
Yeah, but we have it's not official. It's just a thought that's still being shaped of a possibility in the future where maybe we start off with a village. We're gonna say, okay, this Krimpenewaard, we're gonna say it's a village in the Netherlands.
It means cringe.
It means cringe, but it's also
it's cringe-worthy if you literally translate it.
And it's just for this idea. So for instance, we have based.
Based too.
Yeah, okay, let's say we're gonna buy based. We're gonna buy based. We're gonna say Massimo, Nick, myself, everyone in the party. In the next years, if you're gonna move, we're all slowly going to move towards based.
Yeah.
We're going to buy the houses.
Yeah.
We're going to own some land. And we're going to say, this is our goal. In the next 30 years, all of us will move to based.
Yeah.
And then we have a starting point.
Yes.
We like colonized a village. We're going to take over the city council. We're our only party there. And from that on, you can maybe work towards wat is hecht?
Close-knit
community. So not a country, but a very, very strong community where we're not going to do...
The current situation obviously does not allow for this.
Of course.
Because what would happen if you take over a town is that the town will be united with the town next to it. And they do local fusions of local governments. So they unite two city councils and then you lose your majority.
They want to take the power of the local communities and take it towards the government.
As long as you don't have too many people in your organization, that has got a problem for every solution.
60,000 minimum.
No, I mean a problem. People thinking in terms of a problem for every solution. Every option you propose is that won't work and so on. So I think maybe this works.
The most important thing is like the idea, right?
Ideas. Yeah. It's such a cliche to say outside of the box. There's people criticizing Orania, saying you move away from the fight. The true fight is in Gauteng, or you give up the old Boer republics, or you isolate yourself. To the contrary, Orania is not a step downwards; it's a step upwards. It's a step saying, well, okay, we're going to start embracing. So let me tell a short antidote. It's to say the idea of a folk state, a state for a folk, right? Is kind of how Orania originated. A state for the folk, for the people. So then a lot of people embraced that idea, but only in online spaces. And we started joking about it. We said, we are busy with the Volksstaat. They are busy with the Volksstaat, right? So it's just cloud. It's so easy in cloud world and Volksstaat world because you can imagine all the laws. You can imagine how the people is going to act and how the services is going to be delivered and how you're going to rule with an iron fist. But it's not real. It's just your Facebook group or you can have endless debates about should capital punishment be a thing or not, and what to do with these people with these sins, and how churches are going to work and how the economy is going to work, but it's not real. So the moment it starts becoming real, you work with real challenges. So Orania might be smaller than the Facebook group with how many members, but it is a real place.
It's real.
It's a real place. So whatever you do, and Orania has had some very narrow escapes through some of the pressure applied to us and survived it and came up with new solutions and reimagined ourselves and rebuilt ourselves and so on. So the moment you start with something real, you have the opportunity to, do real things. So I don't know. Maybe you should all move one place.
You're undermining my plan, my based plan, Massimo. My idea. Utopic
I
idea.
do really believe in taking space.
Yeah.
But not necessarily the physical space. Which is why we built a magazine.
Of course.
And I know you can joke about me undermining, but I do think I built a magazine.
Yeah, true.
And we built many other things, and we're building a podcast right now, and we're building a critical mass. We're educating a group, and to break free from where we are. So I think we're well on the way to make some.
But we have to do that because it is a war on all fronts. If we just say we're going to do the political stuff, all the rest is just there's nothing
and that's
there.
what the PVV did. They said, we're going to get a lot of seats in parliament, and now they have a lot of seats in parliament.
And nothing changes.
And they changed absolutely nothing, and I regret it. I wish they would have changed it.
Me too. Yeah.
I wish I think they won the elections. I hope they got the opportunity to truly exercise power, to close the borders, to limit migration, maybe even start remigration.
Nexit.
But it never happened.
Yeah.
And it's not my... I'm not deluded by the PVV. I knew this would happen.
Yeah, of course.
But I do think it reinforces the idea that you need to make your own space.
Yeah.
You need to fight the bigger battle and not hyper focus on seats in a parliament.
Yeah.
Listen, there's Afrikaner political parties as well. So our standpoint is not that you should not do this or you should not do that. Do whatever works, right?
Yeah.
So whatever works. I just think our situation, we are such a demographic majority. We can never win.
Minority.
Just politically.
Minority, yeah.
Yeah. What did I say?
You said majority.
Majority was such a small. I wish. So, we're such a small minority that we can never win over the entire parliament. It's just a fact, hard fact of life. You can if you compromise all your values. We see that in South Africa with the Democratic Alliance. They sacrifice their standpoints on basically everything.
Yeah.
So-called classical liberal party sacrifice all their values, and now they have some progression, but for what?
Yeah.
So
the same with the PVV, the other right wing party. It's this, they just have to compromise all of their ideals to just be able to govern with the other parties here.
It's a tough situation.
Changes.
The moment you get in government, that's the thing with the unitary state of South Africa. Even if you were to win, you have to rule over everyone.
Yeah.
Well, that's not going to work.
No,
that is kind of the Orania standpoint. Let people govern themselves.
Yeah.
More freedom. If it's a federal system, let people rule over themselves. Obviously, we in Orania, we embrace the idea of a republican freedom for ourselves. But, whatever the system is to the evolution of power. So devolve the power downwards so that the people can decide for themselves. If you have to rule over all the opinions and all the diversity, then, you have to embrace whatever the majority is. Otherwise, you're going to stay the ruler for very long. I think that building a magazine, building a podcast, that's reimagining space. It's very, very good things.
And also we can't compare South Africa to Netherlands fully because here whites are still the majority in their own country. Of course, it's going down rapidly because Dutch people almost don't reproduce enough anymore. So the demographics or the growth of the...
more than 100% of our population growth is due to direct migration. So not even second generation.
Just migration.
If there would be no migration, our population would decline. And even then, the Dutch would become a minority because foreigners are having more children.
True.
But if there would be... then there's so much migration that we still have a massive population growth. And, you experienced it. The roads are full. There's extreme housing shortage.
And a lot of cultural problems as well.
Yes.
And religious even more. And economic, because it costs a lot of money for the state to fund the migration every year. So what was it, 40, I have to say?
No,
million?
not for the state, for the taxpayers.
For the taxpayers,
indeed.
I think it's for 40 miljard, dat is...
I think that's 400 billion, I'm sorry, in
is
total.
Is it billion?
Yeah, billion
in
is
total.
Miljard,
in
total.
Jan van der Beek
fair enough.
calculated.
Yeah, we have miljard. We have miljard. I know what
miljard. Okay. So the only solution that I think the Netherlands has is we can close the borders and then go full on remigration. But in South Africa, you can do remigration. Like you said, you have 12 different languages. So I think for you, the only solution is every folk
Separation,
for themselves and separate it. And here the solution is
freedom of association. Those who want to live in a cosmopolitan, metropolitan, whatever, Cape Town or whatever,
choice,
at least give us the choice to build something for ourselves. At least that, in the very least. But I understand the issue that you guys have here. But there's only one thing better than freedom. It's the strijd vir vryheid. It's better than freedom itself. The struggle for freedom is better. The fight for freedom. So embrace it. Have fun with it. It is a challenge and it's the survival of your people. But hell, it's a good ride as well to be a part of.
Well, we're having a great time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, true. Because you're surrounded with like-minded people who have passion, who have the spirit to do something, and to be able to live in this era and face with these problems. That's an honor. That's an honor because you get a chance to write history.
Yes, exactly.
You get that chance.
Yes, and don't throw that chance away.
Not like the boomers who had it very easily after the Second World War.
Yeah.
They had an easy life. They could get a house. They're like, with the migration, what's not a problem? Well, we can have some Indian food. Tomorrow we'll eat Moroccan. It's fine. Like, the world is diverse. But we are now being faced with these problems. And it's really an honor to fight with like-minded people and to make friends along the way, right?
Yeah, and to build.
And to build,
What greater privilege than to build.
To make something great.
There's something godly about it, to the opportunity to create.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful to see how... Even then from Africa, the Germans have the same problem, the Hungarians, the Flemish, we are all in the same battle together for preserving our people, our culture, our right to exist even.
Fighting together and not fighting against each other.
No
like in the Second World War, the First World War, it was, and like also the Anglos against the Boers.
That was also,
Ethnogenesis against the European Union. That's a funny, who would have thought?
That's why I love the motto, the African motto, or Afrikaner motto, ons zal zelf.
Yes, yes. And as you guys will see, we have the Orania flag, which is our colors, greatly inspired. The orange, greatly inspired by our roots here. But in the middle, we have someone called the Kleine Reus, this little giant, rolling up his sleeves to work. So he's rolling up his sleeves to build. Very physically we experienced in Orania, knowing no one is coming to save you. If there's a fire in Orania or surrounding area, there's no fire service coming, I promise you that. I think the closest is probably just shy of 200 kilometers away, and they won't come for a veld fire or a house fire. Not in time and not at all. Many times the police doesn't come out to crimes, and if they come, it's very far. It's just a practical thing. So in the surrounding areas, no one is coming to help you with a farm attack necessarily or so. Even the police officers who still try their best, they're just far underfunded, under-resourced, under-trained, under-armed, under everything. And if there's a medical emergency, let me give you a quick example. I know it's just, another story again, but a while ago there was an accident on Orania's, the main road going through Orania. A truck driver from Zimbabwe or somewhere drove his truck into skipped the stop street, drove into a girl in her car, hit her from the side. And she shattered her pelvis, had a lot of internal bleeding, and she was laying in the wreck just next to town, bleeding severely, and so on. The safety and security groups in Orania reacted to this incident, and they had no jaws of life to cut her out of the car. So you have this car wreck, there's fuel, there's danger, there's everything, and they had to cut her out with angle grinders, which is very dangerous. There's sparks everywhere. So
a slijptol.
Slijptol. Okay.
So if you are an emergency responder somewhere working as a paramedic or something, you see that, you will think these people are crazy. You can't do that. It's highly, highly, highly irresponsible. So what's your options? She's bleeding out. Do you wait 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours? Or do you just do what you need to do and get her out of the car? So yes, it was risky. It saved a life, right?
That's good.
I got a helicopter and she was flown out. Shattered her pelvis, broke a lot of legs, had months, if not years, to recover and relearn to walk and so on. But her life was saved with an angle grinder. It was did what we needed to do. No one is coming to save you. And I think, and that is and now, you know, with the help of some friends, we have Jaws of Life, and we're now supporting other people in accidents close to Orania, because neighboring cities 200 kilometers away, they won't come, and if they come, it will take them 2 hours to get there. If you're on a car wreck, you don't have 2 hours. So no one is coming to save you is very practical for us, but also it's ideological. If you embrace that, if you not only accept it but embrace it, you have to roll up your own sleeves, and that's why Orania's symbol is rolling up his own sleeves, getting ready to work. Yeah. You know, if you're concerned about the future, create it.
Yeah.
You know, no one else is coming.
And you could say there are three main points, which are labor,
yes,
community, and God, I think, for Orania.
Well, very good. That could have been those three. Definitely, because that's extremely important for us.
If we have to choose three, of course, there are more, but I think these are the three most...
But our foundational ideas are that we, you know, package the Orania idea with. It's our own piece of land, which we legally acquired. So own land, you need a physical space. Own institutions, which is parallel institutions, would also include religion and community. So you're right there. So own institutions, and then finally own labor. Own land, own labor, own institutions.
Beautiful.
That's like in South Africa, you'll know a potjie, you know, a pot that you put on the fire with 3 legs. Yeah. But it's big and it's round and it's heavy from cast iron. If you take away one of the legs, it will fall over and spill all the ingredients of the lovely potjie over your fire. So you can't take away any of the legs. You need all 3 for
beautiful. And before we end this, I want to touch a bit on the shared ancestry and history between the Afrikaners and the Dutch. And I want to know more about a typical day in Orania. For the people who don't know how to visualize it, you wake up, you go to work.
To a meeting.
Let's go to a meeting. No,
our national sport is meetings, right? So we have a meeting about everything.
But like a typical, may I say, citizen of Orania?
Yes.
What does the day look like? Take us with you.
So obviously it's very diverse. Because we've got so many different role players. But I think let's maybe focus on some of the things that's different in Orania than other places, specifically South Africa. So firstly, you don't have traffic, which is very nice, but it means that most people living in Orania also work there, although there's a perception that people work outside, because how can we maintain our own economy? People work in Orania. So firstly is their own labor thing. It's very, very common in South Africa to have 1 or 2 black people living sometimes on your yard, on your plot, and doing your garden and cleaning your house. And so it's very typical. You know, everyone has got,
but just to be sure, it's not like
that in Orania.
It's not slave labor, right?
Well, it comes down to being paid very, very little money.
Yeah, okay. So
it's not slave labor, but it's
almost.
It's the South African reality is that, you know, anyone middle class, black or white, has got a black laborer working in their house, working in their garden. That's a stark contrast in Orania, where you have to do your own garden, your own house, maintain your own area, and then still make a living economically. A typical day, I think, would start pretty early. You know, our construction teams and so on, they sometimes start 4:30 in the morning
because
it's too hot during the day.
Yeah, because you live in the desert part. Yes. What climate? What's like the Celsius?
Okay, so in summer up to 40 degrees Celsius.
Up to 40.
Yes. A very dry heat and wind as well. And in the winter, the coldest that I have known about in the past, you know, since the 90s is -12, but that's extremely cold. You know, it's not.
So you have very cold winters.
Yes.
Okay.
But the interesting thing is, the bigger problem is very cold and very hot on the same day. Typical desert kind of climate. So you have into the negatives at night and then close to the 40s during the day sometimes, right? So it puts a lot of strain on infrastructure.
Yeah.
So you'll get up, you will have to do some household tasks, such as everyone, but in South Africa,
because in Orania they don't have black laborers on their everything yourself.
Then you'll probably go to work early, especially if you work outside as a farmer or construction worker, and then maybe take a break in the hottest hours of the day, say maybe from 12 to 3 or something like that, and sometimes continue on. We have a lot of community involvement. Me and just my brother-in-law, we sat down and we spoke, and we both had 40 hours in the past week of voluntary service in some sectors. So everyone is involved either by the church or at the school, the Chamber of Commerce, some institution in Orania, you're involved somewhere. It's basically required of you in a sense. So you would do things like that. If you have the opportunity of that time of the year, you will have a cultural holiday. We don't follow the South African national holidays. Many of them are very communist. So we set our own. It's important in Orania that we define ourselves as different as possible, as often as possible. Who's got a right to self-determination? Well, a unique group on a unique territory. So you define yourself according to your own values, not reactionary, but from your own value system. So we have our own sets of public holidays. And if you celebrate those, you will probably go to some Afrikaner Oranian event in town. We have quite an active social life and a lot of community involvement. So your afternoons are almost always filled with something like that. A guy moved to Orania from Pretoria, which is one of the big cities in South Africa, and some of his old friends asked him, what's it like there? And he said, well, I just missed the quiet life in Pretoria. he's so involved in the community.
You have nightclubs, you have bars.
We do.
Do you have a theater of some kind?
Sadly not yet, but Oker, the Orania Kunsteraad, is actively involved in further.
You have a kunst, so an arts council kind of.
Yes. They are actively involving in furthering that.
Obviously, do you have a movie theater?
We do not. We do not have that.
What else? Like a swimming pool?
Yes, very popular one. Very popular one. One of probably the only functional municipal swimming pool in the country there.
Yeah. Wow. Of course. Do you have a rugby team?
Yes.
Cricket?
It's a bit too English for it. No, I'm just kidding. No, Afrikaners actually like cricket a lot, but we don't have a cricket team. The school plays a lot of cricket, but the town itself doesn't have a cricket team. But
you do have a rugby team?
Yes, the college has got a rugby team. We've got netball teams, and so on.
So there's a lot to do.
Yes, absolutely. And we're very outdoorsy people. So in the winter, we would maybe hunt. In the summer, there's the river. The largest river in South Africa flows right by. So there's a lot of water sports, obviously a lot of social events around, a barbecue or braai, as we call it. And things like that. Many people would be involved in safety and security or firefighting or voluntary medical teams and so on. And then obviously it's always the struggle of taking up more political space. So involvement in that, handling crises now. We have, the economic freedom fighters claiming that the status of Orania to exist must be reviewed, and they were marching against Orania and so on. So always handling these kind of challenges coming our way. People are involved in that as well.
So the men of the family, they mostly work like construction, farm, that kind of stuff.
A lot of times.
In general, in general.
Yes.
Women are probably involved in caretaking, maybe teaching.
Yes, there's a lot of opportunities in terms of teaching as well. The economy in South Africa and also Orania as a pioneer community, it's basically, in most cases, both parents would work.
Yeah, you have to. Because
to
there's
survive.
a lot to do.
Yes. And there's just a lot of things to happen.
And who takes, so you have some kind of daycare as well?
Yes, we've got fantastic ladies involved there. Obviously, we're very pro, kids growing up at home, and the people who have the opportunity to do so do that as well. There's also a lot of homeschooling happening in Orania, and so on. So I think, an Englishman wrote about South Africa just after the Anglo-Boer War, and he said, I can't remember the guy's name, but he said, the men fighting over the fierce enemies, but the even worse enemies were the women. They've got this unfaltering commitment to freedom. I hope that the same can be said about Orania's women. There's some very strong women there, but they've got very principled, very strong in those regards, and they will keep you on your toes in terms of the strive towards it.
You need that.
Yes, you need it. I can say a lot about that because in our tradition, with the Great Trek, there were multiple treks inland, but when civilization...
Maybe explain what the Great Trek is.
The Great Trek was when we moved out from British occupation. So there were a lot of hunting parties and things that went north before that, but the actual Great Trek happened when the men took their women with, took civilization and education with that, and the kids were learned you know, the Reformed faith, they were learned, you know, went through schooling and so on. So in the Voortrekker Monument, which is the largest monument in South Africa for Afrikaners, there's a corner, just a huge corner, with a lady with a boy and a girl, symbolizing the actual movement is not just political, it's not just military or hunting or whatever. You need to take the family.
Yeah.
You take the family, you take the woman, and they educate the children. Then you take civilization with you.
But interesting, you mentioned now the statues. Something we didn't touch on, is you see the same starting to happen here. Is how they change our street names from our history and our culture to new, mostly black orientated, communist orientated names, but also many of our statues are under threat in South Africa. And what is beautiful, what you guys are doing is trying to take some of these statues and keep them safe in Orania.
Yes.
And even now with Paul Kreer's statue, making a replica, exact replica of that statue and building it in Orania.
Well, Paul Kruger visited. Yeah, he was received by 1 million people.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, in 1899 or
To get support for the
in Amsterdam.
There's a huge statue of Paul Kruger, I think, in the Veluwe somewhere.
Yes.
Correct.
So back then, the Afrikaner grabbed the attention here in Germany and the Netherlands and Belgium for the Republican ideal and the Reformed faith. It was you know, the Afrikaners, like taking on the British Empire. 1 million people came here to see him. So his statue is being attacked in Kerkplein in Pretoria, which we lost demographically, just not ours anymore. So we're going to build an exact replica. We're actually selling bricks for people. Oh,
really
fantastic!
cool.
Thank you. Your name will be inscribed there.
Is it still possible to support?
Yeah.
So maybe you can do a shout out.
Yes.
So in this camera.
Yeah. So people can actually just check out orania.co.za/Paul Kruger, and they can buy a brick. Yeah, we're trying to sell 2,600 bricks to put up the statue.
To buy a brick with JFVD.
Yeah, we can.
Your name will be inscribed there then.
Yeah, we'll put the link as well, so they can support.
So, you know, 1,000 rands, it's like, what, 50 euros?
Yeah.
50
Even
euros,
less now.
great, for a brick.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
That's for good. A brick, for being part of history.
True.
That's it.
True.
And preserving history also.
And one last thing, I said it earlier, similarities between the Afrikaners and the Dutch. Nick, you live in the Netherlands now. Can you tell us about what similarities you have found between the Dutch and the Afrikaners?
The Dutch that I've found in Europe are quite a friendly group of people. I believe the Afrikaners are also very friendly. So from what I've seen in Europe, France, Germany or so, the Dutch were some of the most friendliest Europeans, but not as friendly as the Afrikaners, I believe.
You guys are more gezellig.
We're more gezellig, indeed. Yeah. There is a bit of a drinking culture here, but beer is your choice. Ours is brandy. Also
Brandewijn.
Brandewijn.
Yeah.
So you are a gezellig bunch of people, and the Afrikaner as well. What else would there be? There's this. Historically, the Dutch were a nation to go conquer, go explore. We have that in the Afrikaner also had that.
Of course, otherwise you could have.
Otherwise you wouldn't have survived. Yeah. And that is beautiful to see that some Dutch still have that or cherish that. Not the liberals though.
And in language, of course, there are a lot of similarities.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities as well. There's also some very strange words you guys have, which we don't use, or we use them in a completely different context, as you know. And but it's very funny, some of your Dutch words also. That is, that is completely different.
Do you also see yourself a bit Dutch as well, or?
No, even though I'm technically 25% Dutch because of my one grandfather, coming here, I still realize there's a massive difference between me and the Dutch. We are from Africa. Yeah, we share a lot of values and things from the past, but I will never say I'm Dutch.
Yes, I think you're right. I think you're right. It's actually easier to identify the differences because one is very it's very likely to not see the similarities because you just see it as natural. You know, it's the problem with liberals. They think they've conquered culture, they're above it. But the thing of culture, if we're similar, we don't see it. Where differences develop, you see it. So that's why maybe a Dutch person will see a stark difference between him and someone from Syria or wherever coming here, because you will see the differences. the similarities between us, I don't think we see that so much, but there are definitely a lot. I think language, yes, but not necessarily in wording, vocabulary, and grammar, although obviously those exist, but more in the way that you think because of language, you know. So in Afrikaans, we've got a vast array of seafaring metaphors, but we were not a seafaring nation. We are a nation of inland people. We have always been on the continent. So beste stuurman staan aan wal, wind in my seile, wind van voor,
even
aan die
the term
roerwees.
kombuis in Dutch is only the kitchen on a ship. They use a completely different word which we don't use.
So that's some of our ancestry built into our language and still very relevant in us today. I think religion is also a big thing. Afrikaners are conservative Afrikaners are very religious, very Protestant, very republically inclined. There was a tradition here and in Belgium where the final verse of a national anthem is a prayer. And we took that on. I think, is it not in Wilhelmus van Nassau as well, the final verse?
Yeah, it's like you sing the first verse and like the 16th or something, right? Yeah. But no one knows the 16th verse.
I do.
Really?
Mijn schild en de betrouw is het gij op, o God mijn Heer, op u zo wil ik bouwen.
It's a prayer.
Verlaat mij.
I can hear it clearly. It's a prayer.
Yeah, you're right.
So we did the same in our old national anthem. We did the final verse was a prayer. And so we sing that a lot of times in the Orania context as well, because it is so that are some things that I think people don't know or notice necessarily. Definitely part of who you are as a culture. Although you don't think about it, it is similarities that we share. It's context.
You mentioned you are not you are Republican, more Republican inclined, but why name your volksstaat Orania and use orange?
Well, Orania is a name that precedes our initiative there. It was the name of the ghost town when no one else wanted it, and we bought it back in 1991, and that comes from the Orange River, which is named after Prince Willem van Oranje.
And do you feel
so the separation is so big you don't feel connected to the royal house?
Do you feel connected in some way to the Oranjes?
Well, definitely culturally. Okay. So, but to royalty, Afrikaners has got no king but Christ. We are not people of a king. We definitely feel a bond to the Dutch, definitely. Although we feel a bit betrayed sometimes as well by the national institutions.
Why do you feel betrayed?
Well, we were left alone by the Europeans under the previous dispensation in South Africa in a very, very bad way, and also betrayed by the English and even the Americans who left us when we were in Angola and so on.
Can you explain more about the Dutch?
The Europeans
screwed them over.
Yes, we were the terrorist movements in South Africa were funded by Europeans, by people from Sweden. A lot of money from Europeans.
The Dutch were one of the big sponsors as well. Yeah.
For
of the communists.
ANC,
yes.
Sponsoring ANC, sponsoring ZANU-PF in Zimbabwe. Robert Mugabe's communist.
Radio Free Africa.
Wow.
Which incited violence against whites.
The Afrikaner huis in the Netherlands were attacked here, and all the old manuscripts were thrown in the river.
Or
in the Gragoor, whatever. So we had bad things and so on, and even the Americans, when we went very deep into Angola to fight, against communism, we were left alone there. And we had to hold to get back, back in the border war. So yes, but now we rediscover common ground with everyday people. Oh, and just as Trump is sanctioning South Africa because of the situation there, the European Union went out and gave $7 billion euros to the government. So so there are things like that, but we definitely feel a bond.
Our states are opposed to the people. Europe is such as. South Africa has betrayed the Afrikaners. The European Union has betrayed the Europeans. So
if we come in power,
same struggle. So and that's why you feel a strong connection to the European people.
Yes, and that's what I wanted to say. Culturally, we feel still to the Germans and to the Dutch, and we're also rediscovering our bond with the South Tyrolean people, which are wonderful people. They supported us during the Anglo-Boer War. The Dutch, the German-speaking people.
The Irish as well, right? The Irish supported you too.
The Irish, I think we feel we kind of is the same in a sense, and the Irish helped us specifically against the English. So, they took a big risk to come fight. There's actually an Irish monument in Orania for the Irish volunteers, for commandos of Irish volunteers who fought with us.
And you also celebrate St. Patrick's Day.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, but, very much in the sense of we're celebrating those brave Irishmen who risked their lives. If they were caught in South Africa fighting the English, they would not be prisoners of war, but executed because
high treason.
High treason.
Yeah.
So relevant now that we some of our representatives are being investigated for high treason because they went to the USA.
To the White House,
treason is a tool of the government, obviously, many times.
But interesting, there was a Dutch commando as well during the Boer War, and Van Gogh's brother fought in that commando in South Africa against the British.
He died in South. He lost more than a year. He died in South Africa, I think just after the war.
Which Anglo-Boer from like
the second one, 1899 to 1902.
Yeah, 1902. Okay.
The big one. The
and
final one.
your grandmother had a very fierce memory of
she was so young, but she heard the story. Of course, they were living in the Sandveld, which is in the Western Cape still, but the English troops were passing away and through that area, and there were some incursions of Boer fort, like Jan Smuts fought there in that part of the country. But she was born
all the way to Malmesbury at the end.
Through that area. And so she was born in 1902 when the war was still in its last year. And what was the custom in those days, once if a new child is born, you invite all the neighboring farms and you slaughter all the chickens and the sheep to make a massive feast for this child. And then at that moment, on the day when the feast was planned and all the guests were coming, the English soldiers came past and they just took all the food and left it. And her mother told that to her, and she was very angry about that, even though she can't remember it. But
so when the English burned the farms as well, they would bayonet all the sheep to death so that the Boers can't use the meat later on for supply. So you've got like scorched earth. They killed everything.
Incredible.
So they left nothing behind for the Boers.
Sad.
Okay, one last question. Massimo, do you have a question? Maybe?
No.
One thing that came to my mind is what is your relation with AfriForum like? Because you have many different organizations as well.
Yes.
How do you work together?
So those who don't know, AfriForum is the largest civil rights organization, I think, in the Southern Hemisphere. They do very good work to shed light on what's going on in South Africa. They mobilize their members, of which I think, is the largest Afrikaner organization as well, and so on. Orania is still a unique community with a unique pursuit, but we have involvement from AfriForum, which includes some investment and some construction that they do here, but also moral support there and back. But we are entities standing on our own feet individually, and that's how we as Afrikaners choose it. We have good relationships, we support one another, but we are still standing on our own feet in terms of we are Orania and they are AfriForum. Good support, good exchange between one another. Working together on multiple things, but we are different entities.
They fulfill a different role also, nationwide, to help.
Orania is got a focus, and that's to be a growth point for Afrikaner freedom. That's our focus.
To end this, I want your best, most favorite saying in Afrikaans to inspire the Dutch viewers and the English viewers as well.
Okay.
So we already
there's
touched
so many.
on Onsel self.
Onsel self is very strong. But I wanna be opportunistic and quote something from our previous national anthem.
Of course.
It says, "Knegte van die Allerhoogste teen die hele wêreld vry." In service to the Almighty, but free against the whole world. We started with saying, wounded but not conquered. That was our thing after the Anglo-Boer War. We lost the war, but we were not conquered. We were never conquered. We just lost the war against a massive military. And to say we are still wounded. Different circumstances, different things, globalization, loss of values, the ANC, the communists, the demographic realities, safety and security, all these things. But we are still not conquered. And now we must say to one another, we are knechte, we are servants of the Lord, on our knees before Him, but only Him. Against the rest of the world, everyone and everything, we're still free. And that starts here and here. And I think that is the message of the Afrikaners to the world.
That's beautiful. Joost, thank you of being part of Feverdream Café, where we discuss the modern world, because it feels like exactly a fever dream. Thank you for inspiring us as well and teaching us so much about your ways and the way that you're trying to secure the future of your people in South Africa. We can learn a lot from that. Thank you for also being in our magazine, The Dissident.
And thank you for having our magazine in your library, in the Orania library.
That is beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to make plans to visit you guys in South Africa to make a documentary. We already made a documentary in El Salvador, which is coming out, I think, the next month. We're working on last things, so we can take on a new project to also visualize what Orania is like and what life is like in South Africa as a minority in your own country. We face the same struggles, I think, just like many other nationalists in the entire world. One struggle, yeah. We face the same struggle, but we can learn so much from each other. We can help each other. We can inspire each other. And that's what you did to us. So thank you so much for being a part of Koortsdroom Café, Feverdream Café. And to you, the watchers, the listeners, also thank you so much for listening, for tuning in. Please support us and buy our magazine, The Dissident. Well, it is in Dutch, but you can use ChatGPT to just translate it. It's beautiful. It's filled with a lot of interviews, which goes on the subject identity, which is very important. So buy, read, listen, share, like. Thank you so much for being a part of this episode. See you next time.
Thank you very much.